So, welcome back to my journal. So, today we will briefly talk about something that I feel really attached to it, which is the values. So, many times you can hear on the media, on the TV, that modern society has no more values. And I think it's kind of relatable because whenever I'm around, strolling in the city, walking around, or like chatting with my friends, or wherever, I always can see that sometimes also the most performing, the most successful, the people that inspire me every day to be better, to do more, they lack in certain fundamental values. And it is something that I don't mean to say it like from a top bottom perspective, so putting myself as the moral guardian of the situation, but rather to understand that there is a systemic problem. So I'm a really introspective guy. I like to think in my free times. I like to think about the problems of the world and plausible solutions, and the reasoning, so like the rationale of why the things are the way they are today. And so I came to the conclusion of understanding that society really never change, like people always do the same thing over and over and over. It's not that like in a century or in another there are like different inner moralities or values, because they're not. The only thing that changed throughout the centuries is maybe the sentiment. It's maybe some kind of technology that push you or like raise the need of doing something to actually address a problem. And I mean, I know that it's like, put it in this way is rather simplistic, but it's something that it's quite fascinating. Just think about it. Like, if you open the media, the news, wherever you want to open, you can see that every teacher, or like every figure, every individual, every personality related to the education world say that today youngsters, they have a very short attention span, which is something that I see the reflection into it. So in the sense that I also do find that I find it difficult to concentrate for more than 5 or 10 minutes on a specific topic. And it's something that really questioned me. In fact, that was the main purpose, was also not the main purpose, but the main idea that pushed me to my first project, which unfortunately it never came out, but that's okay. That's okay. There will be still time to do it, and I don't want to talk about it because I think it's a very innovative idea. The only problem that I don't have neither the capacity nor the time to develop, a proper, project of it. But that's okay. I will find time in the future. Uh, I say so because I don't think it's as important as my other activities that I'm currently enrolled. I'm doing it, so that's why. It's not because I'm laid back or like just lazy. It's because now I have many other priorities that can affect more my professional career. That's the reasoning behind. So so overall, I agree with the statement that today students, they don't have the correct, or like an adequate attention span, focus. And I'm a law student, by the way. So recently I did my exam on Roman law, which is a very fascinating topic because it's history mixed with the legal tradition. So you not only understand really the roots and the foundation of the modern legal system, but you also like the little facts, the curiosity that keeps the interest alive. So that's very fun because I'm not gonna dive deeper into the technicality of the problem or like the curiosity. But around 400 before Christ, so BC, in 400 BC, there was a very famous legal scholar, which is Gaius. Gaius was really famous because he wrote a lot of things about the theory of law, how to classify the law, which is a very interesting topic. I may make another video on the sense of the need of classification for the human being. So basically this Gaius said, I'm gonna divide the kind of injury, so the kind of like torts, which is the correct name, torts and contracts, into 3 categories, because with a triple panel the student can focus better because they have short attention span, which is something crazy to think about it, because like not, I don't want to say old people, but like, let's say mature people, like also back in the day used to call out younger people for like having short attention span, which is very singular, because it just tell you that the problem is always there, it's gonna never go away. And of course, like with the use of technology and the change of sentiments, something changed throughout the centuries. The first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of equality, social equality, the elimination of the idea of race, which, yes, it was pushed on by a common sentiment of like just justice in general, because like, let's not forget that while slavery was abolished like in the 19th century, and I'm not saying a precise date because it depends where I'm talking about, because like if we are talking about the US, it's gonna be like right after the Civil War with the 14th Amendment, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to be more specific. Whether for other countries it can be later or like sooner also. But also the issue of slavery, of like racial discrimination, it's something that was started to be fought like in the 1500s with this it's not really famous like in the I would say in the normal or the average education world, because it's not a very well-studied figure, but his name is Bartolomeo de las Casas, which was a monk. Don't get me wrong, but I think it was a Jesuit, so I don't know how to say in English, but it was a specific type of monk that was doing like the mission for like proselytism, and proselytism means to convert people into Christian. And this guy like used to say that it's unfair that some people were treated as slaves, because all people were born equal under the hand of God. That is a very like extreme summary and summary of his thought. But at the time it was revolutionary, and still also 300 years later was still considered revolutionary. And so like some problems, like as I said, slavery or racial problem, were solved like, yes, for the change of sentiment, that's cannot double on that, but also like for economic means, because if you notice like the integration of like minorities and women into the society happened right after a war. So usually, unless you won the war, but even if you win the war, still like the country is in a very bad shape. So you need more people, you need more workforce basically. So you need to kind of expand the market, enlarge it, in order, yes, to have more jobs and to having more worker, expanding the worker class, but also to prevent a market saturation, which is basically when, you know, there are too many goods in the market and nobody can buy it because, you know, there are not many people that works, and the people that used to work now, they are dead because due to the war. So and you can make, like, you know, 1,000 of examples like about that, but still, like, I feel that this is not something that change over time. So, I mean, it, you know, it can also change, but, you know, it's not a radical change, because still, like, you know, another thing that really get me is, like, you know, maybe the nationalism, like how it's possible that throughout the history there will be always be a wave of nationalism, like after a war or after a major crisis, which is something which is kindly paradoxical, because if there is a crisis, an economic crisis, or like a humanitarian crisis, or like an epidemic or a pandemic, in any case, you can see how people start shifting their beliefs and their intention to a more like conservative and, you know, reactionary, I would say, side, which obviously, like, you know, if you are going to look into the medieval in the past, is more difficult to prove. You need a more detailed explanation, but looking at last 200, well, no, 150 years, like, it's clear that after a war there will be always a rise of nationalism, which is paradoxical, as I said, because if there is a crisis, is the country fault. So, you know, it's kind of the concept of going back to the people or the person, or, like, you know, the environment that hurt you. And it's a complex mechanism. I'm not an expert of sociology or, like, you know, psychology in general, but this concept reminds me very much about the concept of, like, you know, like the injury, the victim of maybe a crime or, like, you know, an assault, often tend to reconciliate with the you know, with the monster that did the thing, you know, and that is crazy. And but, you know, like, in theory, it works the same also for the crisis and the rise of nationalism. Of course, like, this is a very broad, and I do not intend to be like a clear statement or like an academic statement, because it's not, like, due to the time and also to the format of my journal. It's just a personal reflection. I have no time in a short video to explain, to make examples and to sustain my argument, especially if the journal is set the way I want to do it. So it will be a very, like, stream of consciousness, I would like to say. So that's quite interesting. And, you know, like, speaking of values, like, that's the point. I mean,